Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor was a surprise attack which killed and wounded thousands of Americans, a tragedy for all. Pearl Harbor started at 7:55 a.m. on Sunday, 7th of December 1941, and ended at 10 a.m. on December 7th, the exact same day. Here is how it happened. Pearl Harbor, a day to remember. Everyone is so surprised it happened so quickly. The first two waves of the Japanese aircraft began their deadly descent attack on the US Pacific Fleet, which we know it as Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor, which is on the island of Oahu, within only 2 hours, 5 battleships had been sunk, another 16 damaged, and 188 aircraft destroyed. Sadly, only 3 US aircraft survived, because they were posted elsewhere that day. The attack on Pearl Harbor killed under 100 Japanese, but over 2,400 Americans, with another 1,178 injured. The Japanese won for a while, because the Japanese took more and more islands in the Far East. These include the British base at Singapore. Very quickly, the US abandoned its policy of isolation. One of the reasons they did it was that the Japanese were tired at negotiating with the US. The Japanese wanted to continue their expansion in Asia, but the United States had placed an extremely restricted embargo on Japan in the hopes at curbing Japan's aggression. If you are wondering what an embargo is, it's an official ban on trade or other commercial activities with a particular country. Here's an interview from a survivor of
I'm a retired naval chief boatswain's mate, having served my country in peace and war. I was on board the USS Arizona on December 7th, 1941, along with my twin brother, who was in another division on the ship. During the conflagration and the enormous losses of men, I lost track of him, and he was killed on board. The commanding officer who was on board, Lieutenant Commander Fuqua, who became an admiral in the Navy later, pushed me in the back and pushed me over the side with a wounded man in my arms, and he said, "Get out of here before it blows up." I saw a small craft floating in the water stern of the Arizona, and that was about 250, 300 yards out. So there was another sailor standing there. His name was his name was Rose, and Rose and I agreed to go together to try to swim onto that small boat and get it started and drive back to the Arizona and see what we could do about rescuing anybody else. Rose held the boat alongside. He had a hold of a stanchion. It's one of the things that hold the lifelines up. And I climbed aboard and went scouting around to the mud and water and whatever else, the carnage, people. I opened a hatch, and there was a guy in there. His name was, a sailor named Cruz. Cruz climbed out of that hatch and took off running and jumped into the water and went swimming. He was sure glad to see me. And then I started hunting for the wounded men or dead men or anybody else we could get and haul them back to our small craft. And so then we started down, after we left there, we started on down the channel, going south along Fort Island, and headed down past the other battleships that were sinking or burning or turned over or whatever. The Oklahoma was turned over. And we got close to the seaplane ramp and we got hit. And our boat smashed into small pieces. And of course the The oil was on fire in the water there. Rose died there. And I swam ashore, which was a little ways out from the seaplane ramp. And I collapsed on the beach there for a minute or two, and then the Japanese second wave came in and started machine gunning everybody, and so I had to get off the beach. There wasn't anybody who hadn't been hit or something. And I think there was about 300 actual survivors of the Arizona, and probably 10 dock, there's probably 100. And 1,102 are considered killed in action on the Arizona. And eventually my brother was named as killed in action. In any case, I couldn't find him, and that's the only thing I have. That's one of the things I do regret.